So welcome. Want to remind, this is the Climate Action Working Group. I want to remind folks that Marin Conservation League's mission is to preserve, protect, and enhance the natural assets of Marin in a changing environment. And aside from pest pathogens and invasives, climate change is really a main driver of a changing environment. So today we're going to be dealing with 4 agenda items plus reports from the organizations. Brett Wiley will start off with a report on MCE's EV managed charging program. Sebastian Kahn from MCE will talk about MCE's new rates and its program to default new customers into MCE Deep Green. Sebastian, you could do that in whichever order you like. And then we'll have an update on the local green building ordinances. Much has been happening there. That's Bill Ken Strong and Bill Carney. Pam Reeves will report on the Green Homes Tour, and then we'll have reports from organizations. So, so that's the agenda, and I'm going to stop. David, are there any other agenda items that anybody wants to raise? I'm going to stop sharing. None. Okay. So why don't we proceed? And I'm going to turn things over to Dan Segadin, who will chair the next portion of the meeting. So why don't you go ahead, Dan?
Sure. Well, today is kind of an MCE day because we've got Brett and Sebastian here. I'll introduce Sebastian later. So Brett is up first. He's the Senior Customer Programs Manager for MCE. In my mind, he's kind of all things EV for MCE. He's presented to us before. Today, he's here to present a couple things. The MCE Sync pilot results. This is this managed charging program, a software program that EV owners can use. There's new pilot results on that, and he's going to cover those. And then he will also give us an update on the EV charging infrastructure programs. Just as a heads up, I did tell him not to kind of give us some background on MCE or any of that, since people are familiar with MCE. So he's going to jump, into it maybe faster than usual, but that's good because I think we're all kind of up to speed on the background. So with that, I will turn it over to Brett. Thank you for being here, Brett. Great to have you.
Yeah, thanks, Dan, and thanks everyone for having me. I'm going to share my screen now. Yeah, and as Dan said, I'm just going to jump right into it. Okay, can you see that? Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
All right. So I'm reducing the chat. So if questions come through the chat, I'll get to those questions after. And I think just based on the amount of information, a question you might have might be answered in future slides. So feel free to put the question in the chat, but if we can hold questions to the end, I think that would be great. So again, hi everyone. Dan Segadin is Brett Wiley. I'll be presenting today on MCE Sync, which is our residential managed EV charging program. So in today's talk, I'll go over why a program like this is really critical for managing MCE's load and for grid resiliency, dive into the program itself, as well as impacts, including GHG reductions and our impacts on grid resiliency and load shifting. Then also talk about where we're going between now and next summer and why partnering with organizations like Climate Action Working Group and your respective organizations are really going to be helpful to get us there to our goals. So why does load shifting matter? Some of this might be redundant, but just to get everyone on the same page, and I think some of it, even if you are steeped in it, will be new information. So our service area of Marin, Contra Costa, Napa, Solano counties has one of the country's highest EV adoption rates with about 4% ownership. Along with that, almost 20% of all new car sales this year have been electric. Currently, there are over 70,000 EVs registered in our service area, and each one roughly increases our residential customers' electricity usage by 57%. The electricity usage of 4% EV adoption, the current rate, is equivalent to enrolling, equivalent to enrolling after San Rafael, San Anselmo, and Larkspur would double their population. So to put that into another perspective, Antioch, which is a community we do not serve yet in Contra Costa County, if every household in Antioch enrolled, that is equivalent to the current electricity usage of all EVs in our service area. But if we look ahead in a low EV adoption scenario, 30% adoption by 2030, this would be equivalent to increasing MCE's residential customers by 51%. So also critical to MCE and our grid is where and when those EVs are charging, not just that they're charging, period. And the average EV driver charges about 80% of the time at home. This is MCE residential load data. The yellow is residential load, including those that are identified EV customers, and the gray is just expected non-EV customers. We don't know every household that has an EV, but we can make some assumptions based on data. And we're able to compare the average load of EV and non-EV residential customers in this way. So there, as you can see, there is a peak in the early morning with that green, section. But there's also a 12 to 35% greater load for EVs between 4 and 9 p.m. when also the grid is dirtier and the power is more expensive for MCE to procure. This increased EV load is more flexible though. In our pilot, which I'll dive into, the average driver stayed plugged in for 12 to 16 hours while only needing 2 to 3 hours of charge per day. So if we can optimize that flexibility, we can really do a lot for grid resiliency and climate reductions. So overall, the changing of habits of our drivers is really critical to how MCE procures electricity and resource adequacy, while also maintaining low emission, affordable, and reliable power. MCE Sync is an app-based program. As Dan said, it's a software-based program. This has 3 main goals. Number 1, shift and shape charging load away from the peak. 2, reduce customer costs for charging. And 3, reduce GHGs of home charging. We'll dive into these impacts in these 3 areas, as well as how the program is helping us better connect with our customers and understand their charging behavior. But before we get there, I just wanted to go over the program. There are currently 8 vehicle and charging manufacturers and over 24 models that are eligible in the program. These models represent the lion's share of the EV market, with Tesla, GM, and Ford, and BMW being the top manufacturers in the program. So when a customer wants to participate, they simply download the free app from our website or from the Apple or Google Play Store. They enroll their eligible vehicle or home charger. Customers then establish their EV ready by time, and then they leave the rest up to us. Customers can override manage smart charging on a specific day by simply pressing that boost button that you see down here on the screenshot. That boost button will allow them to immediately start charging their EV sooner than we would have it fully charged. The next day, they're automatically back on our smart charging plan. So the app allows for and includes messages and notifications to our customers, provides incentives, and it also tracks customer savings, charging usage, GHG impacts, and much more. So, here's a snapshot of our enrollment. fairly representative of the EV market when considering which vehicles are eligible. We'd certainly like to make greater strides into increasing the proportional enrollment among our Napa and Solano County customers. And of those enrolled, roughly 85% are already on a time of use or TOU rate, which will be an important stat we would dive into later. In terms of total enrollment, we have over 1,100 EVs registered in the program so far. And some of the data I'll be presenting on in a little bit is about our pilot, which ran from November of last year till May of this year. That had 224 EVs enrolled. So between June and now, we've increased enrollment in the program 500%, although we're hoping to double enrollment, more than double enrollment between now and May of 2023. So we're going to dive into impacts now. On the left, you can see this is the expected load shape of EV charging without MCE Sync. The TOU rates that you see here, the 4 to 9 p.m. peak, which you see here in the red, these are customers that would have been on TOU. As I mentioned, 85% of our pilot is on TOU. And you would think that this would deter people from charging, but it actually doesn't. In fact, 60% of EVs in our pilot were simply charging immediately when they were plugged in before our intervention, which would lead to this peaky evening usage and would contribute to an even peakier evening usage when we get more and more EVs on the road. So this graph on the right is with MCE Sync. We've been able to reduce EV charging demand 93% between 4 and 9 p.m. while slowly ramping up demand into the early morning. Also related to this 93% load shift, this contributes to 264 kilowatt hours per user per month of shifted demand away from the load. It also represents a 4.5 kilograms of carbon dioxide emissions reductions per user per month due to that load shift. So this summer, MCE Sync became an integrated program of MCE's Peak Flex Market, which you might have heard about. Our participants are automatically enrolled into that market so long as they're not registered by another program. When an event is called, customers receive a notification to encourage further load shifting or shedding, such as not plugging in their EV on that day. Once the Peak Flex Market season is over, these MCE Sync participants will then be compensated as an additional incentive for their load modifications. But you might be asking, how much more load could we shift if we're already shifting 93% away from the 4 to 9 p.m. ramp? How can we do that even more? Well, as you can see a little snapshot from August, we can do a lot more. So this graph represents all 2022 Flex Alert days. The yellow bars are the average charging demand on non-Flex Alert days, while the blue line is the average EV demand on Flex Alert days. So we were able to achieve an additional 65% peak load reductions on the Flex Alert days, demonstrating that the benefits of program integration, and also when the months of grid resiliency and reliability are up, that customers are very responsive and interested in grid resiliency. All right, so I'll be diving more into the pilot now. So MCE contracted with a third-party evaluator for our pilot. Their evaluation used a comparison group analysis to assess the impact of our cohort, the 224 EVs, versus a counterfactual customer group that didn't participate in MCE Sync during the same time period of the pilot. The findings compare the impact at the household level, which is more robust than only analyzing the charging load, which is what the previous slide we're looking at. The chart on the right is the average participant load impact of the pilot cohort compared to that counterfactual. A positive load impact equals more usage across those hours, while a negative load impact equals lower usage across those hours. So the overall pilot cohort reduced their total household peak load over 12%. And at scale, MCE can reduce our procurement cost and our RA, our resource adequacy obligations, the more we can shift and shape that peak load. You can also see the most drastic load reductions came between the hours of 0 and 1, which is important because customers who do respond to TOU schedules and rates typically start charging at hour 0, the start of off-peak pricing. Shifting load is important, but we also don't want to create a rebound timer peak with TOU rates. So MCE Sync was able to gradually increase the load between the hours of 0 and 5 while still having participants' EVs ready by the morning. So one really interesting finding arose when we compared our customers, our participants' peak load reductions between our solar and non-solar customers in the pilot. Our solar customers reduced their peak load by close to 22%, while our non-solar customers reduced their peak load by roughly 4%. At this point, it's really difficult to know why this difference may exist, but it's possible that behavioral differences could exist between those two customer segments. For example, rooftop solar customers with near zero electricity bills may be less responsive to TOU rates, and therefore they have a greater opportunity to optimize with managed charging. We have a lot more questions to dig into in evaluating our program, but I'm going to dive into more of the known program impacts right now. So cost savings, goal number 2 in the program. MCE customers get an enrollment incentive once they download the app, an immediate cash back once they download the app and start their first smart charge. They also get special incentives on specific low carbon event days and the peak flex days that I mentioned previously. In addition to those monetary cashback benefits, our customers are saving on average $14 per month on their electricity bills, largely due to the app optimizing for off-peak charging. And as you can see, this optimization benefits customers who are on more aggressive TOU rates, such as EV2 rate, compared to those who are on our flat rate. So aside from the peak flex integrations for grid resiliency, MCE Sync also sends notifications and provides incentives on days when the regional grid is especially carbon intensive. We call these low carbon event days. And the notification encourages customers to change their ready by time to 3 p.m. instead of what most customers have their ready by time set to, which is typically 7 to 8 a.m. In doing so, we're filling in the belly of the duck with more solar powered EV charging. And this graph on the right is an example of one of our customers' participation in a low carbon event compared to what their charging schedule would have been, demonstrated between the blue bars and the gray bars. 65% of program participants have joined at least one low carbon event day and have cumulatively, all of our program participants earned almost $6,000 cash back by participating. These low carbon event days have also mitigated 2.8 tons of CO2. And typically we're scheduling about 10 low carbon event days per month. So we have a real important goal in the program to increase that program participation. We've also generated a lot of positive customer feedback. We have an over 4-star app rating on the Apple Store. And people really appreciate the benefits that we're providing and how simple it is to participate. Customers rarely have to check the app, although those that want to, as I mentioned up front, there's a lot of data in there. So if you're a data nerd or you like to know what's going on, you can certainly dive into that, but you can also take it the set it and forget it approach and still get all the same benefits of the program. So I really hope by now you've better understood the program and also the importance of needing more than TOU rates to shift demand. We're going to be adding new events within MCE Sync. and including how could we align MCE's specific renewable energy procurement schedule and cost to procure within the app. When designing programs, we're really planning for integration, and we really want to maximize those benefits across multiple programs. And we showed that and demonstrated that by integrating MCE Sync with the Peak Flex market. And something that's not really, I would say, something we didn't know already, but it's always a good reminder, is that enrollment is a marathon and not a sprint. You know, we're in this for the long haul. We want to work with our customers on quality engagements, not fast engagements. And in doing so, local partnerships really matter. You know, MCE is a public agency, a trusted voice in the community, but our local partners are more well-known, honestly, than MCE. And we really want to work with our local partners and organizations like yours to expand interest and enrollment in our programs, MCE Sync and others. So looking ahead, over the next 3 quarters, we will be adding more vehicles and charger integrations into the app to increase eligibility. Will be mentioned here the F-150, not, you know, it's not widely out there yet, but it's very popular. It's going to be eligible by the end of this year. And you can see the projections with NLX, Toyota, and Volkswagen going into the next 2 quarters. This is our target roadmap between now and May. As I mentioned, we want to more than double enrollments. We really have that goal because, well, we think it's reachable, and it's also relevant. We want to get as many enrollments as we can before the next summer peak flex season starts, so that all of those impacts that we demonstrated from this year, you know, that was with about 1,000 enrollments. And so we really want to double or even triple those impacts by next year with our EV driving customers. So how are we going to get there? Well, we're really, you know, we're doing a lot internally at MCE, including targeting our customers on our EV rate, especially those who could better optimize, even if they're on a TOU rate. But we also need local partners and support from organizations like yours to reach your members. But the first thing you could do, if you have an eligible EV, is enroll yourself. We already have some local trusted community partner leaders who are enrolled in the app. And I think by participating in it, you would get to see the benefits. We'd also love to hear your feedback by participating in it, so we can better change and improve the app experience. But we really would encourage you to enroll yourselves. And then we'd really love to work on a direct email to COG members and your respective organization members. You know, the organizations that are at the table with COG and Marin Conservation League, we would have a really wide reach across Marin County, probably proportionally a higher rate of EV adoption among your members. And we'd really love to reach them to help them enroll in the program to increase our impact and help them save money and reduce their climate emissions. And then social media is less effective, but still important to increase relevance and knowledge about programs like this. And we'd also love other ideas and inputs from you all about what we could do together to increase program participation, and also other ideas and inputs you have about the program. So that's it for me today, and I can stop there and take any questions.
Great, thank you, Brad. Maybe stop sharing your screen for now so we can see.
Yep.
People. Okay, there are a couple quick questions in the chat. One is, if you're a Tesla owner, how does MCE Sync compare to their program?
Yeah, so from my understanding, you know, there are certain OEMs that are going to be including a smart charging app. Most of the OEM apps, though, do not include optimization based on local grid or regional grid emissions. So when I mentioned the greenhouse gas impacts, we're doing that with an integration with a platform called Watt Time. And Watt Time measures the regional carbon impact of the grid. And so, that's a benefit you're getting through our program. You're also getting the benefit of the integrating with our Flex Alert program and other grid resiliency events that usually the OEM apps are not part of. And while financial incentives are great, I know a lot of people here are probably more interested in the climate impacts, but most OEM apps don't have some type of financial kicker to participate in low carbon event days or other grid resiliency event days.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, because this app does link with Watt Time, as Brett said, and the net effect of that is they kind of know when the grid is high carbon intensity, when it's low carbon intensity, and then they can kind of optimize when they charge based on that. Having said that, Brett, I wanted to, one of your charts there did show that most of the charging is shifting from, out of the peak, which is good, reliability for the grid, et cetera, into kind of those early morning hours. And, I think most people know that that's not nearly as clean a time as the middle of the day. So I was encouraged that you also saw a couple examples of how you're trying to push things to the middle of the day. I guess the question is there anything else that can be done to kind of encourage people to shift to the middle of the day if possible? Or is this really constrained by the ready buy time and there's not going to be much opportunity there?
So the ready buy time is the biggest constraint. The app optimizes for low carbon, low cost, and vehicle readiness. Vehicle readiness is the biggest barrier to getting even more GHG reductions, because even though a lot of people still work from home or may not need to have their EV ready in the morning every day, that is the default setting. We did change the default settings or default ready by time settings in the app in July. So, and this is something we're working to encourage our customers. You can change on a calendar or a weekly day basis, Sunday through Saturday. You can change your ready by time on the day instead of just any day. So hopefully we can get more, if someone has a specific work from home day, let's say Wednesday, they could maybe change their ready by time to 3 p.m. instead of 7 to 8 if they're going into the office on other days. We're also planning to test out incentives. What types of incentives and nudges will really get people to change their ready by time? Right now we're paying $1 per program participation. So if you opt into changing your ready by time on a low carbon event day, we will pay you $1. Again, for some people who are climate advocates, it may not be they're going to want to do that, but it might be the convenience factor. So what can we do to nudge over that convenience factor? But yeah, the ready by time is the biggest sticking point, though.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you're thinking about this. The great thing about software, you're dealing with, it's flexible. You can change it, and the idea of them being able to customize by day, or in the future, if you see patterns like every day at Thursday they're still plugged in and so on. You could then say, hey, today do you want to shift your ready by time or whatever? You can save more money. So I see a lot of opportunity there. Anyway, this is all in the context of the Watt Time data seems to indicate that, charging in the middle of the night is, 10 times, it's an order of magnitude more carbon intensive than the middle of the day. So I'm sure you're working on that, and really appreciate the efforts there. I'm shifting to the chat. People can also raise their hands. Bell asked, what's the eligibility of a plug-in like the Honda?
Yeah, so plug-in hybrids are eligible in the program. We don't have as many of them as BEVs. So, for example, a Chevy Volt is an eligible vehicle. We really work. I mean, EV Energy is our provider, and we, of course, we work with them to design the program. But the integration of the vehicle really starts at the auto manufacturer or the charging manufacturer, and they need to have certain software enabled that allows for open integration between the vehicle telematics and the software. And some auto manufacturers are harder to do that with than others. I can check in on Honda. I don't know for a fact on that, but it's not a priority integration right now. The upcoming priority integrations are going to be based on demand. So there are a lot of Toyota PHEVs on the road. So we want to get more of those in the program. And then Hyundai is a growing EV manufacturer. And then Kia will be our next one.
Great. Kurt?
Thanks, Dan. Well, kudos to, Brett and the MCE team for leadership on this stuff. I just wanted to sort of take it to the next level in terms of, I think, where this is going. I'd be curious what Brett thinks about this. On October 4th, the CEC held a workshop, their EPIC conference, and CEC Chair Hochschild said, well, if you look at the capacity of a roughly 1.2 million EVs, that's about 10 gigawatts. Those are not all bidirectional. Just to put that in perspective, we hit a system peak on September 6th, a record of 52 gigawatts, okay? If they think that we're gonna hit maybe, 8 million EVs in California by 2030. So that's about, just using the same math, roughly 80 gigawatts. So a huge amount of untapped mobile battery storage, which can become the swing reliability asset for the state. Lots going on in that space, but what we're trying to do at the Climate Center is sort of accelerate the policies by which all that largely untapped mobile energy, resilience energy could become a reliability asset. That we had a big fight in Sacramento about the extension of Diablo Canyon. That's 2.2 gigawatts. Okay, well, compare that 2.2 gigawatts to potentially 80 gigawatts of EV capacity sitting in people's driveways, largely unused by 2030. So we'll look forward to the opportunity to continue working with all of you to make that vision a reality. Specifically, I think Marin is really ideally suited to become a global leader in this space. We did a press conference last week in Sharm el Sheikh with the CEC and the PUC talking about the vision. I put a link in the chat to the deck that was presented by those folks last week. If you look at what's currently available in the EV market, most people are buying unidirectional EVs. There's a small number of readily bidirectional enabled, such as a Nissan Leaf. The number of bidirectional enabled models is going to grow rapidly, hopefully. But meanwhile, we're spending billions of dollars on EVs and EV charging infrastructure, which is not currently mandating bidirectional use. So what we'd like to see, Brad, I'm glad you're nodding your head. We'd like to get to a world where everybody is installing and mandating, in fact, only purchases of bidirectional enabled EVs and bidirectional EV charging equipment, specifically so that this huge amount of battery asset can become a grid reliability asset. So I think what Brett's talking about is at the beginning, and that's a pivotal first part. But the broader vision, as we sort of look forward to the future, is so much grander than that, with using these as a massive swing asset to keep the lights on. So appreciate all the work of MCE on this, and look forward to working the rest of you on potentially having local governments in Marin pilot the sort of insistence that when we're buying EVs, when we're buying chargers, we're only putting in bidirectional chargers and only buying bidirectional EVs specifically so we can not have them quickly become stranded assets, which are not able to be sort of grid assets. So you'll be hearing more about that later on.
Thanks, Kurt.
I don't know if you have any comments about all of that.
Yeah, Brett, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I guess yes to all of the above. I mean, essentially, like, MCE and lots of load serving entities want to tap into the potential of bidirectional EVs, true like vehicle to grid integration. And as you mentioned, this first step, managed charging, which is still a vehicle grid integration, is important. The thing that I've noticed in the market is that there's a lot of people talking about vehicle to grid integration, but the main party not at the table is the barrier to enabling that to happen are the auto manufacturers. Nissan, they've had the Leaf for a while. It has been enabled as a possible vehicle to grid integrated vehicle for a while, but they haven't opened that up to customers. And there are charging companies out there that are trying to sell bidirectional chargers that allow the vehicle to be a home battery. But unless the auto manufacturers open up the capability, we're going to be stalled by their control over the vehicle software. And so, anything we can do to work with the auto manufacturers to open that up and do test pilots. There are load serving entities doing test pilots on that, but they're so small. Like PG&E's vehicle to grid pilot program has, I think, 5 to 10 F-150 Lightnings enrolled. Like that's their pilot. And it's all lab controlled environment. So yes, we would love to do that. But what I've noticed is there's a lot of theoretical talk and enthusiasm in the advocacy and charging community, but the auto manufacturers aren't there. And I think they just, I think if we're going to put effort, we have to like really make sure they're at the table and they're committing to goals.
Okay, Kurt, real quick, let's, so we can do others. So you do a quick follow-up and then we can move on.
Yeah, just the quick follow-up. Yeah, I agree with everything Brett said. One of the ideas we're chatting about is let's maybe have California mandate bidirectionality. I mean, CARB and California has set a lot of global standards in the clean energy industry. So CARB has set requirements for emission standards for vehicles. Could CARB also set bidirectional requirements so that we can overcome some of the resistance that Brett just talked about? Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, no, thanks for those kind of bigger picture where this could fit in, future vision. Let's go to John Sarter.
You're muted.
Muted.
I said, hi, everyone. I'm happy to be here today. I just kind of want to speak to the OEMs getting on board with this. They really are. It's just a matter of they have to do their own little testing first, with these small pilots. GM's in it, Ford's in it. Those are the two big, American manufacturers. So, as far as mandating right now that all vehicles be bidirectional, there aren't that many that are. Nissan is open to the public through Fermata now, actually. Fermata will allow 16 kilowatts currently with their bidirectional version. They're coming up with a 22 kilowatt version. That's more for fleets, but all the OEMs are going to get on board, or are getting on board with this, and most notably the two American manufacturers, GM and Ford. So it's here. It's not going to jump out all at once. But if you're looking towards a new EV, you stick with those OEMs, Nissan, Ford, GM, BMW is already doing it in different locations as well, as is Honda. So, it's probably in most of the vehicles. It doesn't require a hardware change on the vehicle. It requires a software change to allow the bidirectionality to occur. So most vehicles will be bidirectional, but as far as which ones are absolutely going to do it and how much they'll allow, that's going to trickle out over the next couple of years, probably.
Great. Thanks, John. Well, let's go to Jack. Jack Crystal. Okay, let me go to the chat. Jim Burrows asked, to encourage charging during the middle of the day, does MCE Sync work with workplace charging, assuming the workplace is an MCE territory?
The app only works with your home charging location. And a lot of that is just, if we're optimizing for rates, for cost, which is rate based, it has to be tied to where you're going to charge the majority of time, and that's your home. So when you download the app, you have to set your location and the rate you have at that location. So it's only for home charging. We are looking at managed charging demand response program for the over 900 level 2 ports that MCE has installed with our customers through our EV charging program. But MCE Sync would not be the program for workplace charging.
Thanks. And then Ken Strong asked, does EV Sync work with rooftop solar in any way to optimize charging when a customer's rooftop solar is adding power?
Yeah, great question, Ken. So we have I would encourage you all to look at the MCE Sync page. I'll put it in the chat as I'm talking. And we, in August, unveiled a beta integration with rooftop solar. So you can optimize your charging with rooftop solar and NEM to ensure you're getting the most value out of your solar system while also reducing the most GHGs. Let me put that in the chat. There's more information and detail on the website about that solar beta test. And we'd love to have you all, of course, download the app and participate. And if you have rooftop solar, give us some feedback on how that beta integration is working.
Great. And then Pamela Reese asked about the which auto manufacturers do allow V2H or V2G. And I think that's kind of been answered. So let's move on from that. Is Jack there? Jack Crystal?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'd like to ask as to what the sources, different times of the day of power are that MCE is using. Is it their own? Are they buying it? Where is it coming from? Is it PG&E partially? Is it not? Can that be explained, please?
Sure, yeah. So this goes beyond the app. So there are two things going on here. Like if you are an MCE customer and you're on our light green or deep green service, you're getting on our light green service, it's 61% renewable now. If you're on our deep green service, it's 100% renewable. And even as you might know or may not know, our light green product is over 90% greenhouse gas free, even if it's only roughly 60% renewable, because there's hydro facilities in our portfolio that don't count as renewable. So that's MCE's procurement. On what we're procuring on a per day base or like on an hourly basis, I don't have that information. I could drop a link to our integrated resource plan, which might have some more information on that. But the important distinction here is, and why MCE Sync functions the way it does, is even if all of our customers bought, and only 2% of our customers are on our 100% renewable, by the way, so most of them are on our light green. But let's say all of them were on our deep green, 100% renewable. That is just our customers. The grid itself includes a lot more customers out there. And overall, the grid is more carbon intensive than MCE's portfolio. And so when we're thinking about grid resiliency and overall emissions reductions, if you're getting 264 kilowatt hours of load shifting a month, that's benefiting when the entire grid is operating, not just MCE's procurement schedule. So that's the big difference. And it would be I think I'll post a link in the chat for CAISO, so you can kind of understand what the California Independent System Operator has on our resources on an hourly basis. But that will give you a sense of why it really is important to shift away from the 4 to 9 p.m. window, when actually there's the most natural gas being used on the California grid, and then as well as our more regional grid within California.
Okay, great. Let me shift to David. You're muted.
Sorry, thanks. Brett, I have a question. Could you say a little more about how the interface with the vehicle is accomplished? I'm not talking about the software, I'm talking about any physical components of that interface.
Physical components. There's, well, it's a software, so there's no physical integration. Like the software doesn't show up in the vehicle's, dashboard or anything like that. The big thing that does occur when a vehicle is enrolled to, when a vehicle is enrolled into MCE Sync, or a home charger is enrolled to MCE Sync, is if you had a preset in your vehicle, or for 60% of our drivers, no setting in their vehicle for when they charge, the app overrides that setting either from the vehicle or the home charger.
Okay.
But there's no physical change or difference in the charging experience.
Okay, but let's go to Bob Miller. You're muted, Bob.
Yes, I know. I really want to thank you, Brett, and the other folks at MCE for your work on this. We're really big fans of MCE's innovative programs to accelerate the adoption of distributed energy resources like that include load shifting, peak shaving, battery and storage, bidirectional charging. So we really want Marin to be leaders in this area. So we'll certainly work with you to publicize this and get the word out. I am curious. Seems like there'll be an awful lot of EVs in MCE's territory, including Marin. So 2,500 is great, but is not super ambitious. So you're clearly running into all sorts of challenges. What's the denominator? What's the number of vehicles, EVs in MCE's footprint?
Yeah, so right now it's about 70,000 that are registered in our service area. We'll have more data on that, of course, at the end of the calendar year, once the DMV and CEC update the dashboard. That's the denominator that we're playing with right now, about 70,000.
Okay.
Yeah, and yeah, to the point of 2,500, it may not sound like a lot, but that's 4% program participation. And if you think about, I mean, I'm not the marketing expert on our team, but typically when we think about program participation, we're thinking about in the 1 to 2% of people who could be eligible would enroll. So getting to 4% would be, more than double our expectation. We would love to blow the doors off of it, of course. More than 2,500 would be great. But not everyone wants to sign up. Some people are just happy with what they have. And if you have ideas on how we could increase enrollment or improve our messaging, we'd love to hear that. 2,500 is a minimum. We hope to keep growing that.
Yeah, and Brett, that's not a criticism.
Oh no, I didn't take it as that. I know you're. It's
just to say that I just thought I was curious that that folks are not sort of lining up to participate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I assume we're going to move to Sebastian at this point. Brett, is it possible to get a copy of the slides that you just presented to Bob so he can circulate them?
Yeah, I'll send it as a PDF in an email so it's easier. Yeah,
that's great. Okay, well, thank you very much, Brett. Really appreciate it. It's a promising program that has a lot of flexibility potential going forward. So we're excited.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for having me.
Okay, With that, we're now turning to Sebastian Kahn. He's a community development manager at MCE. I'm sure a lot of you know him. He's been on the Power. He's presented to us before. You know, he works with local governments, businesses, community-based groups, and nonprofits like us in order to support, among other things, GHG reduction goals, sustainability, et cetera. So he's been a great resource to us, generous with his time. He's here today to talk about the deep green changes, in particular, how people are enrolled. I think he's going to touch base on the MCE price increase. And then if there's anything else of note he wants to get into, he will. So welcome, Sebastian. Good to have you here.
Appreciate that, Dan. Thank you. Can you see my screen okay?
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yes.
And the notes are not showing, are they?
No.
Good. I always got to make sure with Zoom. Well, thank you, Dan, for the intro. Met many of you before, have been to many of the MCL COG meetings, but for those of you that I have not met, Sebastian Kahn, I'm a community development manager at MCE. Dan gave a great overview of my role. I'm kind of a generalist at MCE. I'm not diving into specific programs like Brett is. The way I see it is I'm kind of like a utility player in baseball. Play a little bit of first base, play some right field, catch from time to time. So with that being said, here today to talk to you about our rate setting process, some market conditions going into why energy prices are the way that they are, and our new deep green policy which is gonna take effect in the new year. So let's cover that first piece first here on deep green. So as some of you may have been tracking, in August of this year, our board authorized Deep Green to become the new default service for new customers throughout MCE service area. And as this group is familiar, and as Brett touched on a little bit previously, Deep Green is our 100% renewable option. Just for a sense of scale, Deep Green has about a 2.2 participation rate across our service area. It is an opt-in service, so you, as it stands now, have to opt up to receive that 100% renewable. I think this group may be familiar as well, but half of the premium charged to customers, it is, we typically say on average about $5 or $6 more a month for the average customer. Half of that premium on a 1 cent per kilowatt hour basis is allocated back to MCE's local renewable energy and program development fund, which enables us to invest in different programs throughout the agency and purchase more renewable power. And the reason for this change, as our board had authorized, as you all know, and many of you are around at the inception of MCE, a key component of our policy as an agency is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and other pollutants associated with the electricity sector. And the way it stands now, our standard light green service, which Brett had mentioned, is about 61% renewable. It's 61% renewable, and that's what the vast majority of our customers are participating in. And if you take a look at our operational integrated resource plan, light green is expected to become more renewable throughout the years. We're going to see it be 70% renewable by 2026. And in a little less than 10 years, in 2031, we're hoping to get it to 85% renewable. So with this in mind, we're a few years off from getting customers to those targets. And so the change in Deep Green for new customers gives us the opportunity to accelerate our work and our progress toward long-term goals of supplying 100% renewable energy. And of course, making Deep Green the default service is going to require additional energy procurement. At the time of the proposal, when it was put before our board back in August, our power procurement team was suggesting that we may need flexibility in our procurement to meet these goals. For example, Deep Green is 100% California solar and wind. And what we were thinking at the time was that maybe we need to augment this a bit and procure other renewable sources as part of Deep Green, like geothermal and biomass. That's no longer the case for the duration of this 1-year pilot. Our our procurement team is suggesting that we will be able to procure all of the energy from solar and wind resources, which is great. And several other CCAs have already made 100% renewable their default service option for some of their new communities. Close to us, East Bay Community Energy did that, as did Silicon Valley Clean Energy. And so who does the policy apply to? It's going to be all new residents and businesses starting new PG&E accounts beginning January 1st. And so what that means is that if you're a light green customer right now, you're not going to automatically transition to deep green. It's solely for customers that are opening new accounts. So let's say you move to a new municipality and you set up an account there, new construction, things of that sort. And we're anticipating about 8,500 of those types of accounts each month to enroll in Deep Green. Now, obviously we want to balance equity as part of this throughout our service area. And so we know that low-income customers spend a disproportionate amount of their monthly income on their energy bills. There's a number of programs to help mitigate that. One is the state program CARE, the California Alternative Rates for Energy. And so what MCE is planning to do is subsidize that premium for CARE and FARA customers. So technically our board has approved MCE to reinvest the revenue from that premium that all of our customers are paying. But it's not necessarily costing MCE anything because we're getting that revenue back from the existing customer base. And so we're thinking about 1,000 new enrollments a month will be on CARE and FARA. In terms of how many customers may opt out of this, we're not totally sure yet. You know, typically when we do a new enrollment for a community, we see about 10 to 12% of our customers opt out. For example, we recently enrolled the Solano County city of Fairfield in MCE service, and they're sitting at about 89%, 90% enrollment rate with MCE. So we're using kind of those numbers as a benchmark for the anticipated folks that we see opting out. So what does this look like in terms of a communications plan? We are planning to do a 3-step customer contact process. For all customers that are starting a new account, there's going to be a print mailing component. They will also get a reminder by email and then a final reminder after, I believe it's a month of service. And so, yeah, really want to be transparent with the process and give customers choice if they choose to opt back down to light green or opt out of MCE service entirely. They're open to do that. And this upcoming topic here is actually fresh off the presses. This was discussed at our board meeting last evening at about 9 p.m. or so. And I believe there's actually a press release that went out this morning. So what I'm going to talk about now is the market conditions of why energy has been the price that it has over the past year or so, and also what MCE is considering doing in terms of a rate adjustment. So energy prices, as this group is probably aware, are unusually high right now. The market prices for energy were up 60% last year, 60% this year, and potentially even higher in the new year. And this is due to a number of different factors. There's a cost increase in natural gas, drought, inflation, upstream shortages in the supply chain, really lingering disruptions caused by COVID and the shutdown of manufacturing in various countries, has led project developers to take extended timeframes to bring projects online and actually producing energy. And, you know, I mentioned the drought earlier as well, but that's affecting hydroelectric power in the Pacific Northwest, coupled with the bootleg fire that we saw in Oregon this past summer, which really reduced the import capacity. Actually, you know, the energy flowing down the grid, so to speak. And so because of all of these factors, energy providers are seeing our revenues well below budget. And why does that matter? You might think, you know, MCE is a not-for-profit public agency. What do revenues have to really do with anything here? Well, approximately 90% of our revenue at MCE is allocated to purchasing electricity on behalf of our customers. And when the price to do so increases like it has over the past several years, our board of directors at staff recommendation can consider raising rates. We try to do that once a year, if not at all. But it's something that we're considering right now because the market conditions as we're seeing them are making it really difficult for energy providers statewide, including MCE and PG. So as a result, we've had to add, we expected to add to our cash reserves necessary to build our credit rating and receiving favorable financing, but we instead expect to need to pull from those reserves in the upcoming year and even significantly deplete them in absence of a rate increase, which is problematic. So I'll get into some of the other points here. Just a quick snapshot of natural gas prices. As you have seen, they've gone up quite a bit, about 300% in the last 24 months. And gas really affects the market price for energy across, various economic sectors. There's a lot of manufacturing plants, including oil refineries that run on gas. And of course, gas costs associated with shipping goods. The list goes on and on of the broad economic impacts of the cost of natural gas. So getting more specifically into the CAISO here, Brett mentioned a little bit previously about their role. What you're looking here is the CAISO's day-ahead market prices. And for those of you that may not be familiar, the CAISO is the California Independent System Operator. They have many roles. Chief among them is maintaining the electric grid and the competitive marketplace between generating sources and electricity providers like MCE so that consumers' energy needs are met. And so the day-ahead market, as you're seeing here, lets market participants, both generators and load-serving entities like MCE, commit to buy or sell electricity one day before the operating day to help avoid price volatility. And as you can see, that day-ahead market has been up about 60% just since April of this year. And as you know, if demand for electricity turns out to be significantly higher than forecasted, especially during extreme heat waves like we saw earlier this year, the CAISO aims to mitigate that, right? So another important function of the CAISO is resource adequacy, which is the mechanism to help ensure that there's enough capacity and reserves for our grid to be stable and meet demand. As you can see here, RA, or resource adequacy, capacity costs have been trending higher every year as the supply and demand balance for generating capacity has moved from a surplus to a shortage. And just a quick look here at the CPUC price benchmarks on a per megawatt hour basis. The blue represents peak pricing and then green is off-peak pricing. And as you can see, those costs are up as well. A silver lining to this, though, is that this helps reduce the PCIA. Again, the PCIA is the power charge indifference adjustment. It's that exit fee, so to speak, that CCA customers pay to help make PG&E whole for the long-term energy contracts that they entered into before the CCAs were around and started serving customers, right? So as these price benchmarks go up, the PCIA levels out a bit, which is what we're seeing, which is the good news in all of these market conditions, right? So yeah, this is just some more general information on the PCIA. And I think I actually explained that on the last slide here. So, basically when the contracts equal actual market prices, the PCIA becomes zero, and in some instances can even be negative. So at a high level, just to recap some of the market conditions, the cost of energy increased dramatically in 2022. MCE absorbed a lot of those costs to provide relief to ratepayers during a financially difficult year. And now we're proposing a rate increase to bring the cost of service really back in line with the cost of power. So we've always had a strong focus on fiscal responsibility at MCE, and the proposed rate change that our board is considering is going to help us ensure a secure financial position for the future. And when we do set rates, part of our rate design principles is achieving balance between all of these different factors here. You know, we want to be revenue sufficient, but we also want to be rate competitive, stable, and transparent about our rate setting process. And so whenever a new rate change is proposed, like it was at last night's board meeting, it really initiates a 30-day public review and comment period. And so our board won't be taking formal action on the rate change until the December board meeting, at which point it would be approved. So a quick reminder here, this just gives a snapshot of our current rates. But since March of this year, MCE's been providing a customer savings of about 2 cents per kilowatt hour relative to PG&E. And this saves the average household about $11 a month. Overall, we expect customers to save about $90 million in 2022 compared to PG service. And here's just some comparative rates across the various CCAs. As you can see, MCE's on the far left-hand side here in green. And as demonstrated by the graph, our generation rates are lower in many instances than some of the other CCAs. That's due in part to the fact that we use what's called a cost of service based approach to rates. That's something that's really distinguished to MCE, and it basically means that we're setting our rates in line with actual operational costs, primarily the cost of energy. This is different than many other CCAs that set their rates to be equal or at parity with PG&E's. And so what we're going to see in the new year is that many CCAs have a policy to set those rates in accordance with what PG&E is doing. And we're anticipating them to automatically raise their rates in the new year. Many times that does not require their board to approve it. At MCE, we have a policy that it does require board approval. The only other CCA here that uses kind of the cost of service based approach that I described is 3CE on the Central Coast. And as you can see, their rates are more similarly in line with MCE's. So this is a comparison of forecasted rates for PG&E. They recently submitted their preliminary annual electric rate forecast for the new year with draft rates. And what PG&E is forecasting is a 2 cent PCIA reduction. And with MCE's current rates, absence a rate increase that our board would consider, we would be about 4 to 5 cents less expensive on a per kilowatt hour basis, or about $22 less a month than PG&E. However, we are considering that rate increase to, really make sure that our rates are in line with the actual cost of energy and securing some financial stability for the agency as well in terms of our reserves. Reserves are super important for MCE. It really helps our credit rating and allows us to be able to get more competitive. For contracting purposes, we can secure long-term power contracting at rates that are more competitive for our customers. And really what's happening now is we're considering a rate increase that would be effective January 1st. As described, that would go before our board on December 15th, I think it is. The proposal that staff is suggesting to the board is to raise MCE rates by 4 kilowatt hours. And with that 2 cent reduction of the PCIA that I described, they're basically offsetting one another, right? And so the long and short of it here is that bills are still going up by about 5%, but we're still going to be able to save our customers around 4% on their electric bills. So MCE is expected to be cheaper than PG&E again in the new year and save our customers about $7 a month on their household bill. So just future steps, again, we're really looking to do community outreach and engagement on this. So if MCL is interested in partnering with us on that effort, we would certainly appreciate it. Also, if you have other suggestions of community organizations throughout Marin that could help us get the word out about bill savings opportunities like CARE and FARA, I think we'd be open to that as well. So really just trying to do robust community outreach before this actually takes effect in the new year. So I know that was a lot of ground to cover, but I will stop sharing and we can take some questions here.
Great, thanks, Sebastian. So we got, Sebastian covered two things: the proposed rate increase and also the deep green enrollment changes. So we'll take questions on either of those, or if you have another question for Sebastian, he does, as he said, he's a generalist, so you can also ask that, not to open it too wide open. So at any rate, let's see, any questions in the chat or any questions for Sebastian? I had one, Sebastian. What is the status? Has the board approved that 4-cent raise yet or not? I can't remember.
No. So last night, Dan, what is the official terminology for it? They said, yes, we approve this unanimously to go to the full board for a second reading of it, right? So that's going to happen in December, at which point the board would vote to authorize that rate change for January 1 of the new year. So
Yeah,
last night was kind of our first reading.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Thanks. Let's see. Any questions for Sebastian?
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Belle.
Yeah, my question is, you mentioned that you no longer are turning to hydro or biomass as a source. Could you explain why that is?
Yeah, apologies if that wasn't clear, Belle. When we, because you're referring to the deep green portion of my presentation, and when our board was considering that new customers be automatically opted up into deep green, there were some questions about, can MCE supply that energy, that increased demand for that new customer base, right? And at the time we were thinking, okay, maybe we could, kind of add to deep green with biomass or hydro or geothermal, and, potentially using out of state solar and wind as well. We're still using biomass and hydro as part of our light green portfolio, yes. But for the deep green change that's taking place, over the past several months, our procurement team did studies and found enough capacity within solar and wind to be able to be deep green. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sebastian. Any more questions for Sebastian? Or type them in the chat. Go ahead, Kate.
My question is sort of related. MTC is currently conducting a future of freeways study, and they're looking at, for one thing, all tolls on freeways, for tolling all of the lanes. And I think that it's important to just keep this in mind, because EVs have had an advantage for commuter lanes in the past, and there's an opportunity now to weigh in on how MTC sets. The goal is to reduce congestion on the highways, and so how furthering adoption of EVs and incentives for adopting EVs will be impacted by the future of freeways, and their tolling strategies, I think, is important. I'm going to put in the chat just a link to the webinar that's coming up on that. And I just was wondering if either Sebastian or Brett, I'm not sure if Brett's still on, have any input on that.
Sebastian or Brett, do you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I don't think Brett is here anymore, Kate, and unfortunately I'm not as well versed in the subject matter to probably give you an informed opinion today. I'm happy to connect offline if it's helpful.
Brett, you reappeared.
I reappeared. I was in the background.
There he is.
I also haven't heard about that, but again, I think if you want to email Sebastian and I, we can dig into that and check it out.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Bob.
Sebastian, you've not gotten a lot of questions, in particular about the rate increase. It's not for lack of interest. There have been a number of us that have been looking at videos or attending meetings of the retreat of the executive committee and the board. And so what we've seen is sort of an interesting, rapidly changing situation in terms of MCE's finances. It's kind of fascinating that the anticipated surplus went from 115 million to a deficit in the space of 9 months. So I think it's not lack of interest, it's just, I think, an appreciation on the part of a number of us of the volatility of the energy markets, and which is what you're getting across in your statement.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. And I appreciate all of those that were able to join our Community Power Coalition this week, where, you know, we were joined by the actual rate architects of everything that can speak to these matters. And yeah, I mean, with the reserve situation, Bob, we had that massive heat storm over the summer that really ate into the reserves. And so, you know, like I mentioned, being financially secure and having those cash reserves available is important to MCE as an agency. So absent the rate increase, we would have to deplete those even further in 2023. So I think it's that balance, right? Like achieving fiscal responsibility and as an agency, and also balancing the needs of customers and kind of striking that in a way that makes the most sense is what we're trying to accomplish with this rate change.
Yeah. By the way, there's a very good Community Power Coalition meeting and set of presentations. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it is worth highlighting what Sebastian just said. You know, a lot of the programs that we favor and want are going to have to be funded out of reserves. And so, you know, it's in our interest that MCE is very financially healthy at the end of the day. So at any rate.
Yeah, I mean, look at our EV programming, right? Like that's a self-funded program. It's not funded by the state. So being able to invest meaningfully in the local community is important to us. Of course, at a basic level, we want to provide renewable energy to our communities, but also like offering those rebates and incentives to folks that want to go above and beyond and install EV charging and install, you know, battery storage. That's all important, and I think aligns closely with MCL's mission too. So thank you, Dan, for those comments.
So we're kind of past time, I think. Is there any other question or comment for Sebastian before we let him go? Bob, go ahead.
No, that was my previous hand up.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, well, thank you very much, Sebastian. Really appreciate it coming on and covering this stuff for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dan.
I'll turn it back over to Bob.
Yeah, thanks, Sebastian. So the next item on the agenda is an update on green building ordinances from Marin County and Marin's jurisdictions, and that's Ken Strong and Bill Carney.
Thanks, Bob. Bill, do you want to provide any kind of an update on the Marin County, what happened this week, as well as what's going on in Santa Fe first?
Yeah, just capsule of that, and then if you or David Muller could fill in with some details on other jurisdictions. But yeah, so Tuesday at the Board of Supervisors, Ken and I were both there, and David was on the phone and others. It was a good day. So the board passed all 3 of the REACH code components. That would be no natural gas in new construction, or turning that around, that new construction will be all electric. And remodels, significant remodels, will have a menu to choose from of energy efficiency items with a quite a bit of incentive built into that for choosing electrical appliances as part of that menu. And then finally, EV readiness in several ways that are more aggressive than the state default code. So that was a great day, and good support from a number of people who called in about it, and good support in the media. I was surprised to wake up that morning with reports on KQED about what Marin County was up to, and it was subsequently covered in both the IJ and the Chronicle. So a milestone. It also becomes then a model for the other jurisdictions, the other 11 jurisdictions in Marin. It represents, the county's action alone represents about 20% of the county in terms of population, about a fifth. Novato and San Rafael each represent another fifth. So those are sort of the three big ones. Novato met, I guess, that same night, the same evening. And I've seen some reports on that it basically, they said they didn't consider any of the three. So that we've got the two kind of extremes of responses represented on that day. San Rafael represents another model of response, which was 2 out of the 3 came out of a discussion, a workshop on November 7th as the recommendation that is going to our San Rafael Council on Monday evening, this coming Monday evening, and is sort of teed up to pass with the new construction and the EV readiness components going forward for January 1st effectiveness. But the remodel or the renovation part of it kicked off into the future. So we're looking for support in that regard for a timeline, basically, to say, when in the future are we talking about? And the staff report, as I read it anyway, is pretty vague on that. And I think so that's going to be our request. And anybody who wants to show up at that meeting, I would recommend, say, when is that third component going to actually be back before the council for consideration in 2023? And along with that, when will we see, what's the timeline for real progress on appliance replacement plan, which was also part of the grand jury's request. So anyway, that's my sort of little capsule. There were a total of 8, jurisdictions that considered this last Tuesday and Wednesday. So I would turn to others who were at those or know about them for capsules of where they stand. And or perhaps, Ken, you have some further information on that. So I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on in various levels in different places. So Corte Madera sort of took the San Rafael model, and they approved on, as I understand it, on November 15th, they approved the ban on or the all electric for new construction and the requirement of additional EV charging in multifamily units at time of parking lot remodels. So they passed that. Fairfax, which had adopted an all-electric for new reach code some time ago, is looking at the renovations and EV charger reach codes. But my understanding is they have not yet acted on them. That's going to come up in early December. Larkspur has not approached any of them. There were, I think, 8 of us that spoke during open comment time at the beginning of the Larkspur City Council meeting, asking the other night, asking them to agendize these 3 reach codes. And at least one of the council members, Kevin Haroff, said he was open to doing that. I'm not sure where the other council members stand on that. Mill Valley is looking at them, and we're hopeful for some action out of Mill Valley maybe early in the new year. Let's see, San Anselmo has already adopted an all-electric for new reach codes and is discussing the EV and renovation reach codes. I know we have people from those jurisdictions here to correct me if I'm not right on that, or David may have some comments as well. And I think there are a couple of other small jurisdictions, Ross and Belvedere, that really haven't teed it up yet. But that's kind of where most of them sit. David, there are other places we should talk about?
I think you maybe skipped Sausalito, and Sausalito is pretty favorable, but it's not going to take action until early next year. But we're pretty optimistic there. They have a strong sustainability commission there. And then the other small jurisdiction is Tiburon. So both Tiburon and Ross seem pretty inclined to go that direction, but really haven't taken steps. They're expecting to work on it early next year. And so in summary, for those who weren't keeping a scorecard, I think it's pretty significant that by the end of this month or early December, 5 of the 12 Marin jurisdictions will have adopted all electric for new construction, and 4 of those will have adopted also the enhanced EV charger requirements, and 2 will have adopted the renovations. So we're off and running. I think we're in good shape for several more jurisdictions to follow suit. Probably the toughest nut to crack is going to be Nevada. Fortunately, they have a new sustainability commission there that's totally going to grab onto this and take it on and try and make their sustainability commission the center of public discussion of the 3 reach codes, and then have the sustainability commission come back to the council and with a strong recommendation. So that may be the way that ultimately plays out.
You know, one of the things that I think is interesting as we get this gravity of jurisdictions that are signing on to this, we're starting to be able to make the argument, listen, the contractors all want uniformity here. That's one of the big most important things. And now most of the jurisdictions are going all electric and the like. So, hey, you know, Tiburon or whatever, join on board. The contractor community will appreciate it.
Hey, one other thing that might be worth just sharing here is that it sort of begs the question, why are even the jurisdictions that have adopted 1 or 2 of the 3 reach codes, why are they slow walking the renovations? And I think there's 2 reasons. There's the political reality that the other 2 measures are mostly focused on new stuff, and so they don't really impact current residents and current building owners. As soon as you start getting into renovations, there's a political reality that people start saying, hey, this affects me. And so there's that. The other thing, the staffs almost universally have somehow got it in their head that the requirements of the renovation reach code are somehow more complicated than what they're currently faced with in dealing with energy requirements for renovations. So staffs are basically pushing back saying, wow, this is complicated. This is more stuff. Our hands are already full. So those are kind of the 2 pushbacks that I think with time, we'll be working through those. But that's why that 1 of the 3 reach codes is lagging behind the other 2.
Yeah. Okay. So that's Ed.
Yeah. Am I muted or unmuted? I'm okay.
You're okay.
Okay, good. I'm all in favor of new construction of all electric and especially EV charging stations. But, you know, most of the homes built, let's say before 1980 in Marin County had a max of 100 amp service panels. And if we start having mandatory or without incentives changing to all electric as we replace an appliance, that means that panel has to be changed. And that could be up to $2,000 to $3,000 to modify that panel to accept a 200 amp service, the 220 breakers for 20 amp, 40 amp, 60 amp for these services. Now, when you have this in the panel, you have to rip out sheetrock, drill holes through the studs, feed out the heavier duty wires for these appliances. So it's a major expense for older people that have these older homes. And who has townhouses and condos? 2 types of people. Young people just trying to get foot in the door for home ownership. Those are condo townhouse owners. And older folks who downsize to a townhouse or condo, and they're on fixed income. So it's a major concern on this renovation. But again, it's something that might need some incentive for people to do this. But again, I'm in favor of a new construction, all electric, and especially EV charging. That's a plus.
And just so you understand, so the current proposals in Marin County, the ones that have to do with existing residences, there's only a requirement that you take any kind of action if it's a renovation of greater than 750 square feet. So it's a big remodel and probably would require or may well require a panel upgrade because of the nature of that. And also, it doesn't mandate that you go all electric. All the renovation proposed ordinance does is it gives you a menu of cost-effective energy efficiency measures, some of which are replacing your heat pump water heater with an electric, or your water heater with a heat pump electric water heater or space heater. That's one of the options. But so at least right now, nobody yet is suggesting a program for replacing appliances on burnout. Although hopefully we'll see something like that in the next couple of years. So
and Ed, if I can add just one other thing to that, and the question you ask is a great one, because as soon as you say all electric, most people immediately think you're talking about for existing residences. And as Ken just said, that's not what these are about, except in the case of a major remodel. But nonetheless, people's brains go there immediately. How does this affect me? And the thing that I want to report on is there are huge incentives available now, and they're going to get more huge. At the beginning of the year, there are local incentives through Electrify Marin. There are regional incentives through BayRen. There are state incentives through the state of California. And with the Inflation Reduction Act, there's going to be huge federal incentives. And the goal of all those incentives, and believe me, some of them do cover electrical upgrade specifically. So it's not just the equipment, but it's the electrical upgrade, the remodeling that's needed, and so on. And the idea, and all those are stackable. They're not this or this. They're all stackable. You can add them all up. And the idea behind all of those is to make it cost neutral. So the idea is, going down the line, if your furnace burns out and you need to replace it, that it's trying to be made cost neutral, that you could go to an electric, high efficiency electric heat pump versus continuing to burn natural gas. So the incentives, there's good incentives now, and at the beginning of the year, they're going to be great incentives. So I'm recommending to people, if you're thinking about it, wait until just a couple months here. It's going to be a lot better next year on that front.
And if I could just add briefly to so MCL in its letters to all the jurisdictions did include an attachment of the incentives, or some, particularly the emphasis on the federal ones, but we included links to the other ones as well that are available, just to follow up on that point. And, cost is critical. And I would suggest that all of us need to keep sharpening that picture so that as we move into 2023 and get before jurisdictions on the renovation and also on replacement, thinking ahead, that we have that firmly in hand, what those incentives are and where that leaves the comparative costs between gas and electric. Very important point. Thank you.
Yeah. Pam?
Thanks for all that wonderful information. This is just a tidbit, then I have a question. My home is 1,200 square feet, so I'd have to remodel way more than half my home to even hit that mark. And I love Tim's comment that Fairfax, you got it down to 200 square feet. And I know that's not finalized yet, but my question is, I watched the San Rafael presentation that Corey did a great job in presenting. And then I heard the commenters. And why did John Hart, the local developer, push against the reach codes? I couldn't follow why.
I could respond to that if you want.
Sure, go ahead.
So his name actually is Chris Hart. He lives locally. He is a local developer, and I met him when I found that he was proposing a 272 unit apartment complex up near the Marin YMCA called the neighborhood at Los Gamos. And I cold called him and said, hey, have you thought about going all electric on that? He didn't know much about it. I talked to him, and eventually he agreed to go all electric. So he's not an opposition guy. And frankly,
I realize that. That's why because I was involved in that. That's why I'm wondering why he went the other way.
Yeah, well, just let me finish on this. I was surprised to see him there. I was participating by Zoom, but he was there in person. And what I heard him say, Pamela, is that he favored the recommendation that the staff was making for San Rafael for all electric for new and the enhanced EV charging, but he also agreed to go slow on the renovations. So I heard that it was just the that he was.
But why? Why would he?
That's an interesting question. I don't know. Frankly, after the meeting, he contacted me by email and said, "Hey, let's get together and chat." So I may have a chance to find out. But the one thing that I can think of is I think he lives in Ross. And there may be kind of a personal thing here, about remodels. Maybe he's contemplating a big remodel. I don't know. So I think it's that standard thing.
So David, I think the key when you get together with him, that'll be really critical for the rest of us to understand.
Yep.
The arguments and the things the hoops people need to go through to address that.
Yep. I will try and find that out.
Okay, and I think this is an excellent segue into Pam's report on the Green Homes Tour. Our next agenda item.
Well, okay. So we had so much fun. And I don't know how many people are still left here. That Jody, Bill, John, Sarter, and we all had our homes on the tour. So so a lot of us are still here on the meeting. One thing that was so fantastic about this was how it was this grassroots committee partnering regular old citizens like me, advocates, partnering with wonderful county staff and Novato staff, and MCE Sebastian was active on the committee. And so that just was wonderful, that collaboration. And I think what Mark Shabria from the county said that made it so effective was that it's really neighbor to neighbor and not the government saying this is what you need to do or this is what we want you to do. And it was very successful. We had, so it was 4 hours on TV, online. And there were, 880 registrants, 309 unique viewers on Wednesday night, 181 unique viewers on Thursday. And then many more can view it because it's available right now to watch the whole thing or to go home by home. And our goal, one of my main goals was let's get at this in a way that people just don't seem to know how to change. And it's rather comparable, I think, to Tamara Peters' Resilient Neighborhoods program. And it's when neighbors to neighbors talk to each other, then change can happen. And like Annika, your wonderful electric vehicle shows where you just get to go and talk to the people who own the cars and how that changes minds and see, I can do this. So immediately after the tour, sponsors got called, and things are going into place right now because people got hooked up with, I can call so-and-so to do this. And but one of my goals, aside from helping people figure out how to do it, because I just love telling people how we did it and can, Remember talking to you when I couldn't for the life of me find a contractor that didn't charge an arm and a leg, and you helped me find a contractor. And but I want our city councils, I want our electeds to see what smart meters can do. I want our electeds to see what contractors can do. I loved it when David or Robin, you turned me on to David Warner from Red Horse Constructors. He was just fantastic to talk to. And I don't know, must have taken 20 or 30 tries to get him to actually commit to presenting, even though he wanted to present because he's so busy worldwide. But so we're going to do it again next year. And what if any of you could do for us is to give us suggestions, feedback, the things that you thought should change, feedback of what you think worked. And don't forget that there's a fantastic resource page on the Green Home Tour website. Like, for example, Bruce Bell's, all the work he put in to getting the legalese for condo homeowners associations to push through all the legal different problems that they have that I don't as a single family home owner, to and get EV and solar. I got him to, he's going to give us the solar too. That's all available on the resource page. So any questions or?
Very good.
Thank you for your work on this, Sam.
I want to add that Bayren, when it must have been when the county put out a news release about it, Telemundo got in touch with the county, the television station, the local television station, and they wanted to not just look at the tour online, but they wanted to actually do their own television spot. So on Tuesday, they were here at my home and did a recording, and they were so wonderful. Oh my God. And so somebody was here from Bayren to talk about it, and somebody was here from the county, and then the Telemundo guy. They were just wonderful. And there'll be a 2-minute spot in a couple weeks, and I'll get the link for it in case anybody wants to watch my home one more time. But but it'll be in Spanish, and it'll go, it's Bay Area wide. And I did ask who views their show, and that's the most watched show, Spanish speaking station in the Bay Area. They said because it's NBC and they have a lot of resources.
Great.
Thank you very much, Pam, for putting this together. It really was wildly successful. But and I love what you said about getting it in front of city council folks. Maybe that can be a part of next year's presentation, is, working in a component on that. What do you do with this information to get it systemically, conveyed to everybody in the community?
I would highly recommend that you contact your, like Rachel Kurtz. I know her pretty well, so I have invited her to make sure she watches it. I've invited Kate Collin to make sure she watches it. So if you just keep doing that with your electeds, I think that might do something. Jody.
Yeah, thank you, Pam. It was a great
success. I've sent my link to lots and lots of folks. I just wanted to also mention, I'm not sure if you know about this, but Kathleen Gundry and I are going to work on a proposal for a sort of a recognition program for Marin County that would be similar to, this house is pesticide free, where there'd be markers of some kind that we could put up on our fence posts or whatever that say we're an all electric home, so that we can talk with our neighbors when they walk by and say, what does that mean? Or people who pledge to become an all electric home or to be a green home. So we have to look at identifying those in a process and and some yard signs kind of thing, or window clings. But we, and I guess, I think it's Silicon Valley has a recognition program. So we're going to do a little research with them and then come back to Marin Green Home Tours and see if you guys might want to sponsor or support or just be in, you know, involved with a recognition program for homes in Marin.
And that's a great idea. And I want to go back and say to Ed Schultz that I so appreciate when you have been, this is the second time I've heard you ask this question about how we're going to manage the electricity and what's it going to end up costing people who, with the changes that might be needed. And that's exactly the kind of question we need to address. And I'm grateful for David Muller's wonderful response, but keep pushing it, Ed.
Thank you.
Okay. So it's around 10:50, so we only have a few minutes left. We'll go to an abbreviated version of the organization report. Annika has been waiting patiently to report on Ride and Drive Clean. Annika?
Hi, thank you so much. I think this was a great meeting, and I just wanted to let you all know I have been using MCE Sync with my car, with my EV. So if anybody has any questions, please let me, reach out to me. We have solar, so I'm kind of testing out the beta solar implementation, and it was a little bit glitchy in the beginning. I think it was part user error and part bugs in the system, but now I have it working, and it's working very well with my with the EV. So yeah, reach out if you have questions. I just have a few quick updates about Ride and Drive Clean. So yeah, we just kind of finished our season of EV and e-bike shows. We put on 4 shows this year, 2 in Marin County. We had Bon Air and Point Reyes. What I loved about the Point Reyes one is that we were also had a table there with electric landscape equipment. So we were demoing to people that, this is a good way to transition off of the gas, gas landscaping equipment. I know, the city of San Rafael has a ban on gas leaf blowers, and hopefully we're moving forward with more bans like that. We were also out in Walnut Creek and in Alameda, sponsored by AMP. So we're kind of expanding our territory a little bit. We also are just coming off of our very first e-bike discount campaign. We've partnered with the New Wheel, which is out in, here in Larkspur, out in San Francisco, and also in Oakland now. So it's been very popular. We put on 2 e-bike webinars, and we had over 100 people sign up for those webinars. And so we'll have some results coming soon about that. A lot of the folks from the Marin Bike Coalition attended, and we invited the bike coalitions from all over the Bay Area to come as well. And so we're really hoping to collaborate with them to, move forward. And then I just want to say we keep doing our EV 101s and 102s regularly. We almost have a weekly webinar, and they're very popular still. And I just wanted to shout out to a couple people that, we are mentioning these things, like Dan, you're talking about, the duck curve and how we have a lot of solar energy during the day. So we're really messaging to people to use, to charge their cars when, during the day when we have plentiful solar energy and, at workplace or at home. So that's really great. Also, we talk about bidirectional charging and the opportunities there, always talking a little bit about decibel and these like energy, management systems that are coming around. I was also at an EV charging infrastructure conference in New York in October and heard a presentation from Fermata, what it's called, Fermata, I believe, Energies, and they're actually piloting the V2G system in Brooklyn. They have they were presenting to us about this, and I loved what they said. Like, having an EV is not a liability to the grid, it's actually an asset. And soon, as this technology is moving forward, soon we might be getting messages from our utilities that say, hey, can we take 30% of the energy that's in your battery now, because we need it on our grid. We'll pay you this much for it. So very exciting. I think we're a few years away here. They're just piloting it a little bit in Brooklyn and some other places here. I know John knows more about that, but anyway, those are my updates. Thank you for letting me share.
Hey,
Great.
this is John. Did you ask anything of me? I was away for a minute. I just caught the very tail end.
No, I did chat with you though. I was trying to chat with you. So check in on that.
Oh, I will reply. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I was just talking a little bit about V2G and, energy management, home energy management systems like decibels.
It's coming. I mean, the pilots are going to be, first, they're going to be V2H only because they want to test it, right? And make sure it's safe and reliable. And then, but every PG&E actually just released a public notice that they're developing the first tariffs for vehicle to grid. So keep an eye on that. It'll be interesting to see what they come up with, and hopefully it's beneficial enough to the consumer or prosumer that they'll want to take advantage of it.
Great. Okay, so we've got 5 minutes left. So for the additional reports are going to have to be super brief. Who's next? Bill, do you want to talk about resilient neighborhoods? Or Jody, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'll just mention very quickly about 350 Marin. We're working with students at Archie Williams in the Communications Academy. They're making a video for us, a little promotional video, which is going to focus on our internship program. So I just wanted to mention, if you're wondering maybe where you want to put some donations this year at the end of the year, if you make any donations to 350 Marin, it will go to our internship program. We have a student right now with TAM. And as some of you know, we had 2 students, college students, who worked all summer with both the Fairfax and the San Anselmo Climate Action committees. They were college students, and we do pay them. So that was just my encouragement to keep an eye on our website, where our new video will eventually be from the Archie Williams students. But also, we are doing some fundraising at the end of the year for our internship program for college students next summer. Thanks.
Thanks, Jody. Okay, I'm not seeing any, Belle? You're on mute.
Am I off mute?
You are.
Okay, quickly, I just wanted to report on the Ecologically Sound Practices Partnership, which is collaborates and works closely with Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. And we've had some really superb presentations, but I just want to mention field trips. And we had one the other day to the Valley Memorial Eucalyptus Memorial Site in Novato. And it was fascinating. And we're having another one in Southern Marin. And I'll let you know about when it's going to happen so you can participate. And also I wanted to mention that the biomass project of Marin is at the phase of pulling together and creating a collaborative of stakeholders to represent those in Marin who have a direct and an indirect interest to be to be closely involved with us as we move ahead. Thanks a lot.
Okay, great. All right, so we're just about done time, right, Bill?
Yeah, just quickly, you mentioned resilient neighborhoods. So Tamara last night actually graduated the final class of the fall session, and they'll be gearing up again in January. So on their website, you can sign up for those and encourage others to do likewise. Sustainable San Rafael, I just want to highlight that on November 29th, a Tuesday, the planning department or planning commission will be reviewing in some detail, it sounds like, the Northgate Town Square proposals. So any voices to encourage them to, make that as a really model of evolution of a shopping center into a real mixed use community town center, that would be great.
Okay. So, David?
Just a quick question for Bill. Since that's such a huge development, is there any evidence of erosion of any of the commitments the developers have made to do good stuff? They're all electric, EV charging, all that kind of stuff. Any erosion?
Not that I've seen, but I really haven't seen what's going to be before the Planning Commission. So watching that staff report would be a good indicator.
All right, thanks.
Or David, you can contact me because I've been deeply involved in that project.
All right, great.
And I would just add that I think that they can say things, but how they implement them. there needs to be kind of a watchdog approach to it. We could learn a lot from this development.
So
and Bob, if I could just put a plug in for the newsletter in the November-December newsletter, there is an article on the Marin's Green Building Code update, and there is a table that has the resources, incentives, and rebates that are recommended not only by the county, but Bill included IRA tax credit information, and we have the Green Home Tour links on that as well. Sorry, Bob.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So going forward, there's not going to be a meeting in December. It's a bit close to Christmas. So the next climate action working group meeting will be on January 20th. And with that, I think we're done. Thank you very much, folks.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.